Step into the shadowy halls of the Tudor court, a world of power, intrigue, and secrets. Today, we're delving into the story of a queen whose name has been whispered through centuries, often in fear and condemnation. We're talking about Mary I, England's first reigning queen, but better known to history as Bloody Mary. But was she truly the monster history has painted her to be? Or is there more to her story? Let's uncover the truth behind the tragic reign of the first Tudor queen. Before the infamy, before the throne, there was a princess. Mary Tudor was born in 1516, the cherished daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Imagine the splendor of her early life. She was a princess of England, doted on, educated by the finest minds, and betrothed to the most powerful men in Europe. She was the jewel of the Tudor court. The palace interiors of her youth weren't dark and foreboding, they were vibrant, filled with music, laughter, and the finest tapestries money could buy. She was clever, talented, and deeply pious, her mother's daughter through and through. For a time, it seemed her future was paved with gold. But in the world of the Tudors, fortunes could turn on a dime. Mary's world shattered when her father, Henry VIII, fell head over heels for Anne Boleyn. Desperate for a male heir and captivated by Anne, Henry sought to annul his marriage to Catherine. When the Pope refused, Henry did the unthinkable. He broke away from the Roman Catholic Church, declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England, and married Anne. For Mary, this was a catastrophe. Overnight, she went from being the treasured heir to the throne to an illegitimate outcast. She was stripped of her title as princess, declared a bastard, and separated from her beloved mother, whom she would never see again. The lavish apartments were replaced with cold, lonely rooms. The courtiers who once bowed to her now shunned her. She was forced to serve her own infant half-sister, Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn's daughter. Imagine the psychological toll to be cast aside by your own father, your legitimacy questioned, and your deeply held faith declared heretical. Yet, through it all, Mary clung stubbornly to two things, her Catholic faith and her belief that she was her father's true heir. This defiance, this core of steel, would define the rest of her life. Years of humiliation and uncertainty followed. Henry VIII went through for more wives after Anne Boleyn was executed. Mary was eventually brought back into the line of succession, but only after her younger half-brother, Edward. When Henry VIII died, the 9-year-old Edward VI, a fervent Protestant, took the throne. His reign pushed England further into Protestantism, making Mary's position as a devout Catholic even more precarious. She was under constant pressure to renounce her faith, to conform. She refused. She lived in constant fear, practicing her Catholic Mass in secret, essentially a dissident in her own brother's kingdom. Then, in 1553, the sickly young King Edward died. But in his final days, his Protestant advisors had persuaded him to write Mary out of the succession once again, naming their Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as the next queen. This was the ultimate test. Was Mary going to accept her fate and fade into obscurity? Absolutely not. This is where Mary Tudor showed her true strength. She didn't hide. She didn't flee. She gathered her supporters in East Anglia, a Catholic stronghold, and rallied an army. The people of England, who saw her as the rightful heir despite her religion, flocked to her banner. They respected her legitimacy, the daughter of their long-revered Queen Catherine. Lady Jane Grey's reign lasted a mere 9 days. The country had chosen its queen. In a stunning reversal of fortune, Mary rode into London not as a fugitive, but as a triumphant monarch, greeted by cheering crowds. For the first time in her life, after decades of suffering, she was Queen of England. Finally, after all the pain and humiliation, Mary had the crown. Her primary goal was simple, yet monumental, to return England to the one true faith, the Catholic Church. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that this was her sacred duty, her divine mission to save the souls of her people from the heresy of Protestantism. At first, she tried a gentle approach. She reversed the Protestant laws of her father and brother and restored the old Catholic practices. But the seeds of Protestantism had taken deeper root than she realized. Many in England, particularly the powerful gentry who had profited from the dissolution of the monasteries, were not willing to go back. This is where her reign takes its dark turn. Faced with resistance, Mary's government resorted to a tool that was, unfortunately, all too common in the 16th century: heresy laws. These laws made it a crime, punishable by death, to hold Protestant beliefs. The punishment was horrific: burning at the stake. Over the next 3.5 years, nearly 300 people, men and women, rich and poor, clergy and common folk, were executed for their faith. We must remember, public execution was a grim reality of Tudor life. Her father, Henry VIII, executed tens of thousands for various crimes, including treason. Her half-sister, Elizabeth I, would also execute Catholics for treason. But Mary's executions were different. They were for heresy, for thought crime, and they were intensely public spectacles meant to terrify people back into the Catholic fold. Eyewitness accounts, most famously collected in John Fox's Book of Martyrs, detailed the gruesome scenes and the steadfast bravery of those who died, singing psalms as the flames licked at their feet. These stories, spread by a very effective Protestant propaganda machine, cemented her image as Bloody Mary. The dark palace interiors weren't just about shadows and stone, they became synonymous with the dark decisions being made within them. But her reign wasn't just about the fires. There was another, more personal tragedy unfolding. At 37, Mary was unmarried and knew she needed an heir to secure a Catholic future for England. She set her sights on Prince Philip of Spain, son of the Holy Roman Emperor, the most powerful Catholic monarch in Europe. To her, it was a perfect match. To her subjects, it was a disaster. They feared England would become a puppet of Spain. Parliament begged her not to marry him, but Mary, stubborn as ever, pushed ahead. The marriage was a political failure and a personal heartbreak. Philip found her plain and much older than him, and he spent most of their marriage abroad. But Mary was desperately in love. Twice, she believed she was pregnant. The court celebrated, announcements were prepared, and the whole country waited with bated breath for a Catholic heir. But the pregnancies were false. What was likely a combination of wishful thinking and a medical condition, perhaps uterine tumors, became a public humiliation. There would be no child. The Tudor dynasty's Catholic future died with her phantom pregnancies. Mary's final years were bleak. Her health was failing. Her husband was absent. Her people were resentful of the Spanish marriage and the religious persecution. To make matters worse, she was pressured by Philip into a war with France, which resulted in England losing Calais, its last remaining territory on the continent. It was a devastating blow to English pride and to Mary personally. She was famously quoted as saying, "When I am dead and opened, you shall find Calais lying in my heart." In November 1558, at the age of 42, Queen Mary I died, likely from influenza or cancer. She had reigned for just 5 years. On her deathbed, she was forced to accept that her heir was the very person who represented everything she had fought against, her Protestant half-sister, Elizabeth. With her last breath, Mary's Catholic restoration came to an end. So, how should we remember Mary I? Was she the bloodthirsty tyrant of Protestant legend? Or was she a tragic figure, a woman shaped by trauma, driven by a sincere but misguided faith? The truth, as it often is, lies somewhere in between. She was a woman of incredible resilience who endured decades of abuse to claim her birthright. She was England's first undisputed queen regnant, proving that a woman could rule as effectively as a man. But her methods were brutal, even for the time, and her religious zeal alienated her from her people. She failed in her two main objectives, to make England permanently Catholic and to produce a Catholic heir. History is written by the victors, and the victor in this story was Elizabeth I, whose long and glorious reign built a national identity on Protestantism and a rejection of everything Mary stood for. Mary became the perfect villain in that national story. But when we look past the propaganda, we see a more complex and ultimately tragic figure, a lonely, determined woman, haunted by her past, betrayed by her body, and utterly convinced she was doing God's work. Her story is a powerful reminder that history is never just black and white. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the dark and complex world of the Tudors. What do you think? Was Mary a monster or a martyr for her cause? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history. See you next time.